How's it, everybody? Aloha no, aloha kako. Welcome to season 2 of AAF Hawaii Education Series, 2 Scoops. Each month, AAF Hawaii 2 Scoop Series will spotlight a different industry leader who will share life and career experiences, as well as advice and takeaways learned along the way. To simplify things, the chat will be moderated. We encourage you to submit your questions in the chat box for Q&A, and we'll be looking at them. I'll be personally looking at them as we go through, and so will the moderators as well. But before we begin, I'd like to share with you about an exciting Pauhana event that's coming up. It's a Pauhana workshop coming up on Tuesday, November 14th, 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. at MVNP. Sean Watase, creator of Block Studio 3, will share his insights on the powerful combination of marketing and AI. Also, what AI is, how it's affecting our industry, how to use AI in its many forms. The event will be held both in person or via Zoom if you are not able to physically attend. Cost is $5 for AAF Hawaii and add 2 members, $15 for non-members. We are excited to have with us today as our special guest, local boy, done well, Jason Ulep. Jason has over a decade of experience from owning his own businesses to overseeing the brand development and creative production of national organizations. He's a dynamic organizer and hub of communication for a diverse group of clients and businesses. In fact, in 2001, he was recognized as Hawaii's Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He was the owner and founder of Hyper Squad Dance Company and Kallusive LLC, as well as brand manager and senior design apparel graphics for such nationally renowned brands as VF Corp, Vans, Foxhead Inc., and Maui and Sons. Jason Ulep, welcome to the show.
Aloha. What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yay. Hey, let's dive right into this. From owning your own business to working for someone else, what was that transition like?
It's been amazing. I mean, getting medical, 401k, vacation time, for the most part, getting into the corporate world, when your work day is over, it's over. And that's something I think that people overlook when they think they want to own their own business, because they think owning your business equals freedom, right? But what they don't realize is it's a complete opposite, or it was that way for me. Like when you have your business, especially in the infant stages, you don't have days off. You're constantly working, if not physically, you're working mentally. You determine your worth. So the grind is real. I mean, having that business, you have more responsibility. You have employees, you have customers, you have your competition, you have overhead, rent, utilities. So sounds like a lot of fun, but I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying this corporate world.
Hey, you worked for a variety of different brands. How have you had to modify your design aesthetics for each brand, or have you?
It's weird because I haven't really modified it much. I think one of my greatest assets has been my versatility, and I'm pretty good with direction and following a vision. So if a client or a company that I'm working for gives me the direction or the angle that they want to execute, I'm pretty good at doing it. I think overall, as far as aesthetic, it's about just understanding the brand that you're working with, understanding their consumer. At the end of the day, I've come to understand that the companies that have hired me are hiring me because of me. They're seeing something that they like that I was able to create or provide or have in my resume or in my portfolio. So it's just a matter of me believing in that, believing in the vision, and looking at what they want and how to add me to it.
Well, since we're talking, about you, let's take the different parts of that. Coming from Hawaii, being a local boy, what do you think made you stand out from the competition? For instance, like values, style.
Obviously, portfolio was important, right, to stand out. But I think it's being grounded and coming from such a small plantation village in Hawaii. I'm from Waialua. We weren't poor, but it was definitely a humble beginning. Me being an adult now and having a family and kids, and seeing how hard it is, to be able to provide, to know what my parents' sacrifices were, that has kept me grounded. I always think about it and I feel like I wasn't supposed to make it or be in the position that I'm here today, working side by side with Steve and Doran. I think if you ask me as a kid or any other kid back in the day from Waialua, none of us would have had the courage to dream this big or even think that we could do something like this. I mean, to be honest, like in high school, my girlfriend broke up with me just because I said I was going to be an artist. And she was like, oh, my uncle's poor and he's an artist. So that didn't work out, So I just think it's, staying humble. But I guess at the same time, for me getting hired at Vans, what made me stand out was I joked that it was that I wore Aloha shirts. When I came in for my interview, Steve Van Doren loves Hawaii. He was wearing an Aloha shirt. In our conversation, I was able to finish every sentence for him. I knew all of his favorite places he wanted to eat. He would say, oh, when I get to Hawaii, I like to go to that Italian restaurant on my way to the North Shore. And I'll be like, Asagio's? Yeah. And then I get the pie, Ted's, so I was able to, finish a lot of his sentences, so I think that played a huge part, and probably the personal connection that I was able to create too, I think at the end of the day, when I was interviewing, you need to be able to connect with the person. They need to be able to not just look at you for your abilities, but look at you as, is this a guy that I want to travel with on business meetings? Is this a guy that I want to sit by in the office every single day? Can we get a drink and have some food together, and I think that has been key, to the success. I make myself very relatable and I understand, people.
This is kind of going off a script, so to speak, because usually I ask these kind of questions at the very end of the interview. Mm-hmm. But since you touched on being, young and being from Waialua, is there any advice that you would give your younger self right now, if you could?
I don't know. Like I wouldn't change anything, to be honest. Like I'm a strong believer that everything I've accomplished in life, like everything good, bad, whatever it was, got me to where I am today. It's provided me with this job. It's providing me with the family I have today. You just change one little thing, like I think everything could take a left or a right. So, believe in yourself, shoot for the stars, but yeah, I wouldn't give myself much advice besides staying true to myself, and continue to hustle the way I have.
Sorry, for those of you, while he was speaking, maybe some of you can see all of our faces. As he was saying his answer, I was just smiling within because I've often thought the same thing. I wouldn't change a thing because it might change something. It's kind of a past, present, almost like time. Never mind. Anyway, what do you like to do? Sorry, what do you like about what you do?
I draw. I draw for a living. What's not to like about that, right? Like, I think if I had a regular 9-to-5 job and I was a construction worker or a fireman or whatever it is, after a long, hard day of work, I would probably be coming home, drawing, painting, doing something creative, So, how amazing is it, right? I'm being able to provide for my family, do what I love doing and get paid for it. So, yeah.
A portion of the people joining us today are in college. What advice do you have for those entering the workforce and deciding whether to stay here or move to the continental U.S.?
I definitely encourage them to move. Sorry, but I would. A lot of the hard thing about the design industry, at least when I was there, there's a lot of undercutting on prices and rates because it's such a small island, and people think like, well, if I go cheaper, then they're going to hire me. But what they're doing is they've been setting a new standard out in Hawaii. that's way below the industry standard, right, for their work, and it's ruining it for everyone else. There's no union, there's nothing for these people. So the lower they willing to go, the harder it becomes. It's hard for people to set their worth out in Hawaii, and on top of that, it's like when you do jobs out there, I feel like people want to pay you with like spam musibis or something. It's like, we're pretty close to it. It's like, hey, I got a concert. I need a shirt. I'll give you guys some VIP tickets for your family if you do it. You know what I mean? Or it's, hey, you want to draw this t-shirt design? I'll give you some free shirts. I think the worst one that this one of my peeves is like hearing people like promote for help, for talent. And they use the whole, it's your chance to work with us or to work with this brand, and they're just kind of recycling people, getting people just to jump, So yeah, but it's weird and it's sad because, with that saying, and reason why I say like moving is like, from my experience, again, back when I was living there, it's like Hawaii supports Hawaii in so many ways, right? There's so many like diehard Hawaii people, right? But at the same time, I feel like a lot of the industry doesn't support Hawaii. At least that's what I witness. And I could be wrong, things might have changed, right? Like I'll give you an example. When I was there, if you're in a Hawaiian band and you wanted radio play, radio station would pretty much bid against each other, right? Like, and no one's going to pay you because everyone wants the exclusive. So if I want my music played and I'm a Hawaiian band, I have to go to this radio station and that's the only people going to play me, right? So it's like Hawaii's not really supporting Hawaii in that sense, right? And it takes like someone, will say, like a local boy, like Bruno Mars. You think of the irony of it, right? Like someone like Bruno Mars who leaves, makes a hit, and because he's left, everyone is willing to play it, right? And that kind of goes in hands with the art thing that I do. When I was here, when I was in Hawaii, it was hard for me to get design work. Not enough to pay the bills, and no real companies are hiring graphic artists. But it's weird because when I moved to Cali, that's when the opportunities happen. Now the players from Hawaii, because I was in California, were hitting me up, and wanting to work with me. And it was just because I was up here now. They looked at me as like, oh, I was the artist that made it, so let's use him, and the irony of that would be they'd be hitting me up for stuff like, hey, we want this tribal art, this tribal design, stuff that's not even in my wheelhouse. There's 1,000 people in Hawaii that could do it way better than I could. Yet, because I was the guy who was from Hawaii that's making the industry in California, right? People were wanting to work with me, which is super, super weird. Like, and I tell the people, especially the people up here all the time, like people that have become supporters of me up here and think, the world of what I'm doing up here. Like I explain to them, I have friends and I know so much more talented people that I feel are better than me in many areas back in Hawaii. The only difference is there was an opportunity. I took a chance and I pursued the dream and I moved. And the people back in Hawaii, there's not too much opportunities for them. And people are not in the position to take that chance and roll the dice and say, hey, I'm going to pack up and I'm going to move to California. So I don't know. I definitely would say move. Yeah. Final answer. Sorry.
No. How does somebody create that opportunity? I know everybody's different, but that opportunity for them and what they're doing.
The opportunity to get in here, like into this industry would be, first off, hopefully you know someone. It's really, really hard to get in. Like if you look at any posting industry-wise up here, normally for an entry level, it'll say 3 to 5 years experience. So if that's the entry level, you got to ask yourself, how do I get the experience? Because everyone, to even get through that door, I need 3 to 5 years experience. So it's really, really hard, right? So what I would say is you just got to do you. You have to find your own path. and you got to create a plan. It's not going to be easy, and everyone is going to have their own story, right? So I can explain and speak on how I made it. It's unorthodox and it's not your typical story, but for me, I went to college. While in college, my self-esteem and my art was bad, was pretty low. I felt everyone's art was better than mine. While there, I ended up opening up a dance studio. I opened up Hyper Squad. While having Hyper Squad, my youngest brother moved to New York while he was in high school, where he got into graffiti. And while being in that culture, he thought I was a lot better than a lot of people that were on top of this website called 12 Ounce, where people could battle before. So what he did was he entered me in some battles, and I entered them and I started winning them. And the response was great. And people started to like what I was doing, which built my confidence. Right. And then from there, I showed up at local graffiti, art shows and community things. And eventually I became a graffiti artist, like I was a vandal, I guess, you know what I mean? It's kind of controversial, but it was weird because it was like a double-edged sword. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde, right? I always say I worked at Hyper Squad with kids from the age of 3 all the way to adults. When I wasn't there, I worked at the Hawaii School for the Deaf and Blind, where I work with kids with special needs and kids of high risk. It was funny because a lot of the kids with high risk that would come in would recognize me as a graffiti artist, Newcon, which was really funny. But with that said, I did have a moral compass because I had owned my own business. So I didn't really believe in vandalism in a sense of public property or anything like that. The things I was doing was I'd hike into canals, and my thought was, the only person who sees this is like homeless people or some random people hiking or something like that. And I didn't do graffiti that was 10 seconds. I stayed in a canal for 5 hours, camped out, spent $300 of my own money and painted a mural, so that was kind of my angle. But for me, as I was doing that, that was all part of my plan, I knew that to get to where I needed to go and where I wanted to be in the art world was I needed to build and earn the respect of the community. And through that, I knew opportunities would happen, right? And while doing that, slowly I was invited to do collaborative art shows. And then from there, I gained the crowd where I was able to do my own art shows, and I just kept pushing hard. I was excited. I'd look at all my friends that were making it in the industry, traveling the world, having toys, clothing brands, and all of this. And I knew if I kept pushing, I would make it. But the hard part was I had so much people at the same time who knew what I was doing that were so against it, because graffiti was such a problem in Hawaii that I knew and they knew if I was to have gotten caught, they'd have a field day with me, right? Like, oh, look at that guy. That's the guy from Hyper Squad, like that's, spray painting in the canals or whatnot. So that was a tough one for me, but I just kept pushing, kept going, stayed focused on my path, on the way I knew I would get to where I was going. And the opportunity eventually presented itself where a brand saw what I was doing. They came to an art show, saw what I was doing. It was, which was Kallusive. And thanks to them, they gave me my big break and moved me to California to pursue my dreams, so that was my break, but for everyone else, everyone, like I said, they're going to have their own stories, right? At the end of the day, this is what I would tell them. Like, you can't look at things as problems, but you can only look at them as opportunities, right? Opportunities will present themselves all the time, but the difference is the people that realizes there's an opportunity in front of them and they move upon them, And if there isn't any opportunities, create it. I always say create it. Don't wait for something to happen. You have to make it happen. The opportunities are there.
If you've just joined us, we are talking story with Jason Ulep, owner and founder of Hyper Squad Dance Company, Kallusive LLC. Works with a whole bunch of different apparel, graphics, nationally known brands. And we're talking story with him today. I'd like to remind you, please put your comments, because I see everybody listening very intently. But put those questions inside of the chat. We appreciate that very much. Fashion is so finicky. What do you have to do to keep up with trends so that your brand stays relevant?
I think it depends on what level your brand is or what brand you're working for, the level. Smaller brands, right? Their speed to market, so they're basically creating stuff. Like, think of an idea today and they're going to print tomorrow, pretty much, within a couple of weeks, they're already going into. So for most of those brands, to be honest, they just copy everyone. They look at who's doing what's hot, what's, this celebrity wearing or whatnot. They pretty much duplicate it. There's so many brands. It's so sad because I feel like they don't have an identity. They just quick to jump on the latest trend, right? Whereas if you're working for a large brand, when you're working for the machine, like I like to call it the machine, when you're working for a large brand, it's a lot harder. A lot of these brands and the brands that I've worked at, you're designing 1 to 2 years in advance, so that means predicting the trends, predicting the colors that's going to be popular in 2 years, so on and so forth, right? It's a lot easier now because of social media and the web to see what's happening. Everything's a click away. But besides that, to stay relevant and whatnot is just get out, learn your consumer, look what they are, travel. And I would encourage brands, like, be the leader. Be the leader, go out there and set the trend, instead of following it, because if not, you're just one of the masses.
Biggest risk you took in your career?
Biggest risk I took. Oof, that's a hard one. So I think my biggest risk that I've taken in my career this is a hard subject. It gets me, that's why. I trusted someone and I went with his word. That's what it is. Like, wasn't a contract. I went with someone's word, I believed that they had my best interests when all the writings were on the wall. I knew what they were feeding me was what I needed to hear to better the situation. And even with that, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I've always been a person that I don't believe in having to earn my trust. I believe more in you losing my trust, so I don't care about people's story and what people have to say about you. That could have been a different part of your life or whatever it is. Right. So for me, it's always, I trust your word. If you say something, I always trust it. And if it doesn't work out, and it doesn't work out sometimes, then I learn from that mistake. Right. So that was probably the hardest thing, lesson. And I mean, the outcome of that was I chose my morals over my brand that I was partnered with. And I lost my partnership. Right. And I mean, even though that was something that happened years ago, like, it still gets me till today. And it's not that they took a little dream away from me, but I feel like they took the food off the table for my kids, so it's that's probably the biggest risk. And that's what happened. That was the outcome of it.
Let's switch that around now. What was the biggest success moment in your career so far?
Biggest success in my career, right?
Mm-hmm. Up to this point, is there something that is a bright point to you in what you do?
I think being it's kind of like a big one. My biggest success is just being placed in the position I am today, to be sitting next to greatness. Steve Van Doren, I've known a lot of great people in my life, and I've met a lot of great people. We all have. Steve Van Doren, I say, is in the top, my dad being number one, and Steve is in the top 3 greatest human beings I've ever been able to know in my lifetime. And I'm fortunate for the last 9 years to be at his side every single day, talking with him, learning from him, growing with him, and having that relationship with him. So that's the biggest success for me, just being there.
I will let everybody know here on the show that we're going to go to questions coming up inside of the chat in a couple of moments. If you got yours, you can put yours in there. What skills do you needed to be successful at what you do?
For me, it's been my versatility first. On top of that is work ethic, my stubbornness. I refuse to fail. I pride myself on being the best version of me. I believe excuses are just excuses at the end of the day. So because of that, I have a pretty good track record with a lot of people. So I think my reputation, and when I work with someone, they know, Jason, everything will work out at the end. If I had a conversation with Jason, he said he's going to do this, or whatever we're going to do, it's going to always happen.
What piece of advice do you have for someone considering design work?
Don't do it. It's a tough industry. It really is. The windows and the opportunities are so small, and it's so hard to get in. Like, think about it. There's only a handful of big companies where you can make an honest, good living out of doing something that I do, right? And for most people, when they get in, they're lifers, so there's not much roles that open up, right? And if you have a team of graphic designers for the youth division, once people get in, unless they really mess up or something, they're there for life, and if you have your team of 5, 6, whatever it is, that's your team, so it's really really, really hard to get in, you need thick skin. Don't get attached to your work, because everyone's going to love stuff and they're going to hate it. And probably if you're considering getting into it, be prepared to be less of an artist and more of a designer, because once you get into this world, you're no longer really doing, unless it's your own brand, you're no longer doing what you necessarily think is right, what you think is cool. It's what your boss thinks is cool, what the company thinks is cool, what the client thinks is cool. And if they like pink unicorns with flame-throwing eyeballs, and that's what it is, yeah. So yeah, it's less of, creating stuff that you're so passionate about,
What do you miss most about Hawaii, if anything?
I miss the people, like 2000%. Like, Hawaii is a really special place. And like, Lolo, if you haven't left Hawaii and you've only been there, like, the Aloha spirit is real. Like, I miss that so much. People that from here go there and visit for the first time, they feel it. When they come back, they tell me, I've traveled around the world, with my career, and there's a lot of places that been close, but there's only one Hawaii. So yeah, it's definitely the people.
Jason Ulep, once again, our guest here today. I'm going to turn at this point to our questions that have been submitted in the chat. So here we go. I have art teachers at Farrington from Waialua that are so happy to see you represent Waialua.
Yes.
Your perseverance is admiring. Our high school students have hopes, dreams, and art skills. How did you incorporate the business aspect of your business?
I think knowing your worth. You have to know your worth. And this is a big debate I used to have with my friends when I was breaking into the industry. Like, people had the mentality like, I'd rather sell 10 paintings. I could sell 10 paintings, but for this low price, but I would be like, I'd rather sell one at higher, So just knowing your worth, setting that standard for yourself, and going for it. Real quick, shout out to Miss Lendio from Hawaii. Has been someone who's, for the last 20 years, 30 years, has always been my big cheerleader on the sideline.
Awesome. Lauren writes, and this goes right along with what you mentioned, I love that you shared that you are lucky to get paid for something you love to do. Was there ever a time you felt drained or uninspired by drawing? How do you keep inspired? And I'm going to add this on there. How do you get people to pay what you're worth, to understand that?
Okay. So yes, art is amazing. It's fun. It's been fun. There's a thing just like writer's block, there's artist block, so it does happen. Like, I've hit a lot of walls, and it can get pretty depressing. Like, imagine I have to create X amount of graphics for the season, but I'm hitting a wall and I just can't, just can't get over it. So it's really, really hard, but fortunate for me is once you get to into a company like I am, a lot of if I have 30 graphics, there's probably 30 directions already for me to go. So it's like there's so much inspiration and so much ask. Like, it's just a matter of, we like a skull with a rose, with some flames. And it's like, okay, so, if I had to think of 30 ideas, it'd be rough, but I already kind of know the directions, what they want. Breaking in and setting your worth up. It's hard. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, how much time did you put into creating what you're doing? And if you think something that took you 3 days to do is worth $50 to sell it at the art show, then that's on you, right? Like, I don't. I look at my time, I look at my energy. I think if I was working at, a fast food restaurant, gosh, I'd be making more money, just flipping some burgers, so I don't know, just being okay with, with it, whatever it is at the end of the day.
I'm imagining that you have to, at some point, have to be settled within to be able to say, no, this is not worth the time, effort, et cetera. Correct?
Yeah, I have standards. I won't even touch stuff, 'cause it's rough because like a lot of people, they think just because like you're an artist, like, oh, can you make me this graphic, right? And you think it's yours, and they want to give you, we'll say he'll lowball you, like, oh, I'll give you $200, whatever. And then you think, well, that's going to take me 6 hours to draw this graphic, right? So if I told you, would you come to my house and clean my yard? I'll give you $200 for 6 hours. Would you do it? Probably not, right? So it's that value, right? You're looking at your value of your time and your energy, right? Like, just people just think like, oh, I'm just asking him to draw something, like, no, like there's a whole process, right? There's time and energy going into it.
Micah writes, what are some tips in developing a portfolio?
First, I always go back to versatility. That's what worked for me. And it's hard to say because like there's people that are really good at what they do. Like there's some artists that they kill it in water painting style of art. Some people are vectored art. Some people are hands-on. They can draw with the pencil really good. I'm lucky and fortunate that when I was at the University of Hawaii, it was kind of when digital world was just kind of happening. And our teacher straight up after like 3.5 years looked at us and was like, I give you folks credit because I don't know what you guys should be doing. Should you guys be doing everything on the computer? Because the future is computer. So everybody's going to want that, right? Or if everyone's learning computer, are they going to want the people that could draw and do the hands-on stuff because that's all the original stuff. So we were kind of in this limbo. So I just kind of plowed through and mastered both of it, so which made me very versatile, that allowed me to build my portfolio. And I'd say like at the beginning stages, just take on random weird jobs. Challenge yourself, even if it's not a job. Like open up the website and see what Vans is doing on their graphics, and say, like, if I was there right now, in what graphic would what graphic would I design for Vans? Then look at McDonald's, if you want to get into print, and say, like, what would their advertisement look like right now if I did a McDonald's ad, right? And try and create those things. And just seeing those, even though they're not necessarily jobs that you've had, seeing the versatility. At the end of the day, I've never once been asked to see my degree, my college degree. At the end of the day, they opened up my portfolio and looked at what was in there and said, this guy is a good fit for what we need,
Lori is taking things a little bit bigger. What do you think Hawaii needs to do in order to become a hub for creatives and attracting work from world-class brands?
I think Hawaii's starting to do a good job. There's like the powwows and stuff that are happening out there. I think you guys, I don't want to let out the bag. I think you guys have a guest coming up that I've been a huge fan of. I don't want to say his name, but yeah, I think there's a lot of art that's happening out there. You have people like Jack Soren, for example. He's just killing it, and it's really amazing. And he inspires me as an artist, because when I was saying about how when I was in my graffiti days, Jack was a kid who would bring a black book to me to have me sign and draw something, a little sketch in his black book. And go, and now to see him, put himself out there, doing these murals, getting collaborations with the big brands, you know what I mean? Like, it's really, really inspiring. I think Hawaii's starting to do a good job on it. They just got to just keep, getting behind their artists and create more opportunities, honest opportunities for them.
Marty, thank you so much. Do you have any suggestions on how a local brand can give opportunities to local artists at a competitive rate?
That's hard. That's hard. That's a really, really hard one. I mean, if you're a local brand that, has mall presence, then I guess, there's a lot of opportunity because they're doing volume. But a lot of these brands are like mom and pop shops, right? That are just trying to make it, it's a high school kid who has an idea. So they don't have the funds, It's like, for me, there's been a lot of points in my career where, especially like the starting off brands, right? I would just do stuff just to help them. I would even do it for free, and I put it out there and say, like, hey, I know you're not in the position to pay for the graphic, right? But I want to work with you, why don't I create this graphic for you? You sell it, you do what you're going to do with it, and no promises. No one buys it. You don't owe me a penny, but pay me what it's worth after. I believe in my talents, and I believe what I have to offer for you, and then so it worked out for me in a lot of situations where I just moved forward. I created product, gave it for free. And at the end of the day, I'm like, it's just my time and energy, right? If it doesn't work, who cares, right? But if it does work, there might be a great opportunity, right? And then from back then, I was able to lock in bigger brands, like people are willing to work with me, like, wow, he sold this much unit. It sold like hotcakes, now they're willing to pay me more than what everybody else was undercutting for, because they knew what they would get in return.
Jason, hang on for a second here. I'm going to close the questions. Thank you so much for submitting your questions, everybody. Appreciate that very much. Not a question. This is the last one. I'm tuning in all the way from Germany at 12 midnight. I just want to tell my brother that I am so proud of your success and blessed that I've been able to watch your amazing journey. Thank you for being such an inspiration to not just your nephews, but many young artists out there. I love you so much.
Thank you.
That's okay. No, I'm reading the messages. Okay. Just out of curiosity, this is actually for me. As a creative person, is there any creative things that you surround yourself with, that you do when you need to buckle down and create? Some music, some it's places, some it's food, some it's, a variety of things.
I like to travel, and our company does that a lot. We get out, we travel. And it's weird where we're in this creative outside of the walls, and they encourage that here where I'm at as well. Like take your laptop, go wherever you need to work. You're not confined to your desk. When you get out of the norm, like it's crazy how the weirdest thing. It could be just a kid walking by, it could be someone scribbling something on a paper, someone's clothes, could be a muddy footprint on the ground that just triggers something that pushes you into a level.
Final question here. I think we're almost at time. I came in, and this is before we went to broadcast today. I came in kind of mid-conversation, and I apologize because I didn't get the whole conversation. Have there been times where you've been able to give back to high schools and students here in Hawaii?
I've been able to give back in a sense of through my companies. Like we were able to, not a high school, but like the Maui situation, right? We do a lot of things where I'm happy. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the brand, but Steve Van Doren was never a fan of waving a flag, and look at us. So like Maui, he goes out, support the kids, support the families, the victims, by giving a whole bunch of stuff to the community, So, I'm always down where if high schools, need anything, by all means, like hit me up. I'm always down to give back, on opportunities. I just think it's weird because when I thought I was making it in Hawaii as that graffiti artist is when I was probably like the least successful. But that's when I got the most like attention and people were like, oh my gosh, he's like so dope. And then once I moved away, then it's like people forgot about me. Like whatever happened to that Newcon guy? Like, did he die or like whatever happened? Like, I don't know what, he just fell off, and it's weird because like now that I'm actually, pursuing a career in it and I'm doing well. So I think I've lost, connection with a lot of people, but with that said, by all means, if you're connected to high school, if there's something I can do to help out, especially with your art program, I'd love to.
Social media of choice.
Instagram.
Okay. And that's where they can find you. And on Instagram, they would follow you at?
Newcon, Newkon.
Okay. And any final words you'd like to say to everybody?
I'd say don't be afraid to dream. If you're comfortable with what you're doing and where you're at, I think you're not pushing hard enough. Like dare to be uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, it's only going to release the best version of you.
Jason Ulep has been our guest, and I feel inspired by today's guest. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of things that I wrote down that I'm going to have to go back and look at, thanks to our guest. Hey, just a reminder for the next two scoops with Debbie Soon. That's going to be Food Innovation and Development Manager for 7-Eleven Hawaii. That's going to be Wednesday, December 13th, 12:30 p.m. Mark your calendars. Thank you very much to our guest for being with us, and thank you for joining us here on this Wednesday. Until December 13th, ma'alamo pono, aloha a hui ho. And just a reminder here, I'm just going to mention real quickly here, Sean Watase, Pauahana Workshop, Tuesday, November 14th, 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Aloha.
Thank you.